Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the July 24th Board of Commissioners Special Call Working Session. We'll be doing 2 tabs this afternoon, and then we'll do the remainder of the agenda book tomorrow night at tomorrow night's meeting. So that we have the first tab is Dana.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Dana Johnson, Cobb County Community Development. I hope all is going well. I have Mr. Philip Westbrook, who is here with us today, who will be providing part of this presentation. Mr. Jason Gaines is on annual leave, so he will not be with us this afternoon. Today's presentation, sir, is to give an update to the Board of Commissioners as it relates to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and the status of where we are in this process. To give you a sense of scale and where we've been, we started this process over 2 years ago with a public kickoff meeting. And since that time, we have gone through a lot of different steps as it relates to analyzing and data gathering for Cobb County, working with the community on identifying needs and opportunities, on ways that we can structure our policies for the county. We've worked and developed visions, goals, and those policies. We've developed the Community Work Program, which is a 5-year program for actions that we will do in order to move us towards meeting those goals and policies. And then finally, we've drafted the comprehensive plan and sent it out for public review. So the next step, once the board is comfortable with the plan document, is to review it, send it to the Atlanta Regional Commission for their review, and then final adoption by the Board of Commissioners after the regional review occurs. Community involvement has been a cornerstone of this plan generation process. We had a steering committee, which the Board of Commissioners selected. There were 5 total meetings with the steering committees, plus over 40 interviews with the committee, the Board of Commissioners, and the Planning Commission. We've had 4 community meetings, 5 community workshops, and a large community open house where we worked with any resident or business of the community to come out and participate in the process of creating our comprehensive plan. We have used extensive use of our website and social media to try to get the word out about what we have been doing over these 2 years. In addition, the Board of Commissioners approved a contract with Kennesaw State University about 1.5 years ago to do a phone survey that reached out to about 2,500 residents. We've had 3 board presentations, and we have also completed 2 public hearings thus far, with 2 more to follow, which will be August 12th and August 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, that being the date. The vision of the county, and this is one that we're working on and continue to alter and modify to make sure it meets what the commissioners have in mind for the vision. But I'll just kind of let you read that for a quick second about where we see Cobb County's role in the community and how we can make sure we're preparing the community for the future. I think it marks where we are as a community to try to find a place that can help people grow and pursue their dreams. I think is a great ending of that particular phrase. With that, Chairman, I'm going to ask Mr. Westbrook to come up. He is going to go through each one of the elements contained in the comprehensive plan and highlight a few of the kind of major themes in each one. I'll put a caveat on there and say he's not going to talk about every single theme in the comprehensive plan, but he really just wants to highlight some of the ones that we think are going to be important aspects to this plan. So, Mr. Westbrook.
Thanks, Dana. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman, County Manager. Philip Westbrook, Community Development. As Dana has mentioned, I'm going to go through each of the plan elements and highlight the strategies that we identified. A lot of these strategies were identified through our community. In fact, all these strategies were identified through our community involvement process, listening to the community and going through the public meetings and the workshops. All of these strategies are part of what was provided to us from the community. If you really look into it and look at some of these strategies, a lot of them are no different than our 2030 plan, and that is because we heard pretty much the same things we did 10 years ago, moving forward into land use and transportation. So as you may remember, there are 12 different planning elements that are part of this comprehensive plan. 3 are required: land use, transportation, and housing. Those 3 are required elements, and then there are 9 additional optional elements that we feel are important to the plan, that are significant to Cobb County, that we feel like need to have some policy guidance moving forward in the next 20, 25 years. So starting with land use, as I said, we heard pretty much the same thing. The strategy surrounding, continue to coordinate and advance land use policies that manage growth by promoting compatible distribution of land uses, and preserving the character of the suburban and rural communities. Also, focusing growth along the spine of Cobb County, along the I-75 corridor, that would help preserve some of the suburban character of east, west, south Cobb. Also, looking at the redevelopment areas and looking at those areas to redevelop and accommodate future population growth and businesses. Transportation looks mostly at the comprehensive transportation plan, which maximizes transportation systems, improving access and congestion, and looking to achieve safety and security, and promoting connectivity. Housing pretty much focuses around promoting a wide array of housing type. This could be ensuring that there's a balance between single-family homes, multifamily homes, townhomes, condos, even our retired living, senior living communities. Working with the Community Development Block Grant to ensure that there's an adequate supply of affordable housing, and of course, making sure that all the housing is safe, meaning code compliant, as well as convenient to all the basic needs and services that should be afforded to everyone. Economic development focuses on the continued effort of targeting our industries, our target industries, and focusing on redevelopment again, encouraging jobs at all skill levels and all skill sets, and providing more programs to assist small business owners and entrepreneurship.
So go back.
Yes, sir.
Walk me through how we're going to promote an adequate supply of affordable housing. Because
Well,
we were at a zoning here this month, where I'm hearing affordable housing now, we're talking about $240,000 houses. I must be in a different universe.
I just did my part on it, ran a
All
road.
right, so walk me through affordable housing.
Well, we're going to have we've got some work program items listed in our to-do list that we're going to work with our community development block grant programs, work with the developers, work with the commissioners and other outside organizations to make it happen.
So we build 10 houses, we feel like we've met that standard?
Not necessarily.
So what's the big picture?
Mr. Chairman, there's a number of programs that we can utilize to help.
Help me here, help me here.
There are items such as
Thank you.
tax incentive programs
Okay.
that come through the state that we use with private developers and that create set-asides for affordable housing. There's working with the Marriott Housing Authority, where they build affordable housing for people mostly of lower to lower to moderate means. So there's a lot of different ways that we can encourage affordable housing, and it's important to remember that affordable housing is not a one size.
This doesn't say encourage, it says promotes. That means we're gonna do it. Encouraging is one thing, promoting something else.
Well,
So we change the word here, or are we gonna leave the word, we're gonna change, are we gonna
the
promote?
word we previously had was ensure, and I think that's the word that I think drove the greatest amount of concern. We did change it to promote because we can promote something which is an encouragement to have something occur.
Okay.
But we can certainly alter that language, sir, if we think that it's there's better usage, better language uses we could have.
So
in there.
in the 2030 plan, how close did we come to reaching that goal? Or was it in there at all?
Yes, sir. Affordable housing was one of the goals in the 2030 comprehensive plan.
All right,
And when you think about affordable housing, again, you're never going to create enough to meet the needs and demands. That's why there's an affordable housing crisis across the entire country. So it's trying to make sure it's in the front of our mindset as decisions are getting made so that we can try to find tools and additional tools to help those people who are of low to moderate means, sir.
All right, well, I think we need to do a better job of defining what that universe looks like, and as much as I hate to do this, put some kind of a measurable metric in there, because either we can do this or we can't. And if it's beyond the means of the county asset to do that, we'd be hypocritical to put it in there, give people false hope, and then we can't meet the goal. Commissioner Weatherford.
Yeah, I think we all feel that, and we've talked about that many times, and we discussed it among ourselves and as well as your department. It really boils down to land prices more than anything else, and the only way to get affordable housing is to reduce the cost of land or more density. And sometimes we can't control the price of the land, and the more density flies in the face of some of the other goals you have. So
And
I don't
that's
see
a
how
lot of
we're
reason
gonna
why
do
we
that
try to
if we
utilize
can't.
tax credits and other economic means to offset the cost that would allow for more affordable housing to get built in the county.
But if it's
because it-
60,000 and up per acre, I mean, before you can get started, before you put a brick in the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we use the word promote, sir, because the county is not in the business of actually building and maintaining affordable housing units. That's really done but through housing authorities. So that's why we use the word promote, since we're not a direct provider of those services. We didn't want to be disingenuous with the county's role as it relates to it, but we wanted to also find ways we could make sure we could encourage it and encourage that those that do provide that to make sure they're aware of the means of which that can happen.
Commissioner Burrow.
Dana, how would we measure that? Is there a percentage nationally that a population or county this size would kind of guidelines from?
Not really, Commissioner, because every single community is different. And when we're looking at measuring issues of affordable housing, there's two real big metrics that we're looking at. We're looking at the percentage of poverty in a particular area, so you know the number of people of the lowest means and how many of those individuals would need safe and secure housing. The other metric that Mr. Westbrook uses as well in his comprehensive plan is what's called the cost burden analysis, where we look at the average cost of housing versus the average income of the residents of that particular sub area, and then making an evaluation based upon whether or not they're spending less than 30% of their income, between 30 to 50% of their income, or more than 50% of their income on housing. Because that's a general metric that's used to kind of get an understanding of how people are faring as it relates to housing in their particular area.
And we did a presentation on that, and we saw those statistics. But what I want this time is something that we put in this plan that's achievable. I don't want pie in the sky stuff, because what happens is someone's gonna hold us to that standard. And you know, and also, as I've been hearing from the town halls, people are already living in their houses and are deathly afraid of being gentrified out because of the tax. So to them, they're already in an affordable house, and now they're being forced to move out because they can't afford their own home. So all these things we need to roll into a new way of looking at the universe, maybe make them a combined issue of how we can, you know, not just provide affordable housing, whatever that term means, but also connected to being able to find a way to stay in those houses and not be rolled out. Yeah, Commissioner Ott.
I think one of the things too, and I've actually been working with the folks down at West Village because they're going to be coming in with the next phase. We have this tendency to think that if you propose a house for zoning, it has to be 2,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet. Another way besides density, like Commissioner Weatherford mentioned, is to get smaller units. For example, in apartment complexes, one of the things in talking with this developer, I asked for affordable housing because they're going to be right across the street from the new Vinings Health Park. So, you know, you can have nurses and technicians and all that are going to want to live right there. And so one of the things, normally you wouldn't think of 600-700 square foot apartments, which is fine for a single person. So I think one of the other things, besides trying to get the price down, is also looking at the size of the unit that you're going to build.
Well, I know Mayor Algood has been able to work with the Marietta Development Housing Authority to create, to address this very issue. So there's a model right there. I'm not saying that we replicate that, but, Mayor Algood just got his stuff together. So we should build on successes and see if we can emulate something like that. Realizing, of course, that we're constrained by a very physically conservative county who watches every dollar. So I just want to make sure that what we put in this 2040 plan is realistic
Yes, sir.
and achievable.
Yes, sir.
All right. So sorry about that, Mr. Westbrook.
That's okay.
I'm not really sorry.
Thanks for
about
the comments, certainly. All right, moving forward into community facilities, the focus here on the strategies relate to parks. The community facility is a little different to element. It has what we have sub-elements where we have parks, water, library, solid waste, and even technology. These are all, like I said, sub-elements of the community facilities. The community would still like to see more of a focus on maintaining and expanding park facilities, programs, and services, especially as it relates to art facilities and cultural activities. Some of the past water conservation efforts have been very successful. The 2040 plan continues to promote water conservation as efforts and the continued provision of safe water supply, environmentally responsible water supply, and wastewater treatment systems with sewer infrastructure that meets the demand of the growing population. Establish innovative ways to maintain and improve the stormwater management facilities that control flooding and preserves water quality downstream. Expand library services to provide more access to libraries facilities. And for solid waste, continue the emphasizing waste minimization and the public education on the advantages of recycling. And then the technology strategy really focuses on providing more access to the community or making sure that the county utilizes the advances in technology to communicate with the public. Human services is much like community facilities. It does have sub elements as well. Senior services, public health, and education. The strategy around senior services includes improving the quality of life for seniors through programs and state-of-the-art facilities that meet their level of needs. Public health element not only focuses on the convenient access to health foods, but also promotes healthy lifestyles and active living. Education's focus is on providing opportunities for the education system to benefit all county residents and continuing to find ways to coordinate with the Cobb County School District, especially as it relates to planning, zoning, and transportation. Natural and historic resources element is an optional element that promotes the protection of sensitive natural resources while allowing for some growth. The county would also like to continue seeing an effort in protecting, documenting, and maintaining historic resources, as well as promoting the education of the importance of historic preservation. Again, we heard from the community about the continued effort in looking at and investigating funding options to provide more open space and green space. The public safety strategy focuses on providing responsive and efficient public safety services and civic educational investments. And our intergovernmental coordination practically just focuses on making sure that we coordinate and adhere to our service delivery strategy, or House Bill 489. Disaster resilience, this slide here, this is the last of our strategies here. These are the last three elements that we have. Two of these, disaster resilience and military compatibility, are elements that you would rarely find in other comprehensive plans. The disaster resilience is consistent with the hazard mitigation plan. There was tremendous coordination up front with the Emergency Management Agency and their update to the 2016 hazard mitigation plan to ensure that there's consistency across the plan. The strategy there is to advance hazard mitigation practices and promote community disaster resilience by reducing or eliminating the impact of natural, technological, and man-made hazards. The military compatibility just looks at the compatibility of land uses in and around the Dobbins Air Reserve Base, and as well as strengthening that coordination between the county and the military installation.
Okay, we need to add the National Guard in there. We have facilities outside Dobbins in this county. And we need to make sure we include them in this plan,
Certainly.
okay?
Thank you. And last, our planning strategies, urban design. It's been a bit confusing topic for some as we go out into the community because obviously the term urban, however, urban design can also include the design of suburban and rural areas or spaces. It sort of reflects how the design of space by considering the existing character. So you're designing space based on what's already there. So whether you're in a suburban character or a rural character, you're going to be designing that based around that. It enhances community image.
So why don't you just change this to sense of place and take out urban design?
We could do that.
I mean, if you're being shot at, after all, you can learn to duck. Take it
Yes,
from
sir.
one, all right? So what you're really saying is sense of place, not just
Correct.
urban, all right? So I would recommend you just change that.
Okay.
'Cause my question would be, if you want urban design, how about suburban design?
Our rural design.
All right? So if you really are all encompassing, then change it to an all encompassing title and take
Yes,
out
sir.
the words there that are confusing people.
And one of the work items that that are taking shape today as part of urban design is the effort focused around the safety and design of within school zones that has been going and moving forward. So those are our strategies. That's a brief overview. As Dana mentioned, that's not all the strategies. We can't. It's just there's a lot. So I didn't want to. Those are highlighted. Those are the most highlighted and most consistent with the goals and policies. So we're going to move forward to the comments. We did receive a lot of comments since our June 6th public comment period opened up. We've been receiving comments ever since the beginning of the project, whether it was comments to help us shape the plan or whether it's comments now on the back end that help us fine tune the plan. We're always receiving comments and we'll continue to receive comments up until our last public hearing. But we did receive guidance on basically shortening our vision statement as well as aligning that vision statement with the strategic plan. And as you may have read in the previous few slides, there was that vision statement that is aligned with the strategic plan. We also received comments on general editing. We had range of typos, grammatical errors, data discrepancies. This plan was written in really two different time frames. There were some parts of the plan that were written several months ago, maybe even a year ago, and then there's been parts of the plan that have been written more recent. And on top of that, you have different writers. So there's been having to go through and making sure that there's a connection with the different paragraphs and different appendices and data. We had to make sure that gets taken care of. So that's the general edits. And then there have been some comments regarding new policies added to the plan. Most of these revolve around land use and promoting a mixture of housing materials and design, considering grade separated interchanges at appropriate arterials, exploring housing rehabilitation programs, and leveraging partnerships with the public health agency and ensuring that that they meet the community needs and provide a healthy lifestyle. Other comments revolve around the community work program and adding items that sort of relate to the policies that have been added. And these look at, again, land use and modifying the zoning code and the architectural guidelines as well as development standards, creating a targeted workforce development program in areas of high employment, and other program items related to parks, such as the expansion of seating at the Maple House Amphitheater. And one of our final comments, we did get a comment to take a look at our small area policy guidelines. Some of these small area policy guidelines have been were put in the plan probably well over 10 years ago. A lot of development and a lot of land use changes have occurred since then. So we're going through our small area policy guidelines. Many of you may know these as the text amendments. So we're going through those to make sure that they're still valid and they make sense. There might be some that are still valid, but the land use doesn't match the text, so we're going to be making some text additions to ensure that they're accurate. And all in all, I know that was very brief on the comments. We do plan to put together a memo and to reflect all of these changes, and we'll make sure that memo gets to you all, as well as the Planning Commission and the clerk and everyone else, to make sure that you all are aware of all the changes that have occurred since June 6th. And we'll definitely have that memo prepared and released by or after August 22nd, which is our last public hearing. And with that, I'm going to have Dana come back up and go over the remaining timeline.
We have a couple of comments from the commissioners. Commissioner Cupid?
It seems as if we are going through this presentation pretty quickly, and that a lot of the highlights that you provided in each of the areas were broad. Perhaps, I don't know if it's just to show that that's the main gist of an area, or if it's to showcase what's most important or most relevant, or if it's this presentation has been put together for expediency's sake. But I appreciated the level of energy from the chairman and other board members regarding affordable housing, and felt something stir up in me as I was reading some of the other areas and not perhaps seeing some things reflected in there. And again, I'm trying to consider my perspective with what I'm thinking the purpose of your presentation is. With that, there are some things I'll just share that I hope are going to be significant tenets or principles of the comprehensive plan, which is to really take a look at development and service levels and resources in areas which are vulnerable and have been underdeveloped compared to other areas of the county. When I was looking at the presentation, I'm looking at what verbiage is bringing those areas up and out to be reflective in all of Cobb. And when I've looked at everything, perhaps I'm missing points, but I don't see how, let's say if it's a Canton Road or if it's a Six Flags Drive, but it's other areas. I think look at Austell Road or a Central Cobb, like in the area south of Dobbins. I'm just not seeing anything that really directs comments towards the very unique nature of some of our challenged areas, and would ask that there be some verbiage that goes along with that, and not just affordable housing is a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. I think there's some other things that can be done. So some specific things I wrote is to encourage job creation where there is a gap in employment and in employers in some of our more dense areas. For instance, when I mentioned south of Dobbins, Austell Road, you just don't see a lot of economic development that's creating job creation, but we have the census tracts in those areas where there's double-digit unemployment. And I'm not seeing anything that addresses that. But I think you touched on it towards the end when you talked about small area policy guidelines. Maybe that's a way to take that and start targeting those smaller areas that have a unique character. Also, in looking at, I think you had community development was one of your areas. I'm not seeing it on the slide. But we can stick here. Let's stick here, even looking at transportation. Like, there's a big conversation about transportation alternatives, like sidewalks and bike lanes, and kind of integrating complete streets in our programming, which I haven't seen being executed in our last plan. So I would just ask, again, I'm not seeing it here, but because I don't see any of that being lifted here, it makes me wonder, is that not a priority? Is it not part?
It's all a priority. It is listed. The connectivity between all different types of uses and complete streets is part of the plan. It's not part of the presentation, but I do know that it is within the land use, public health, and the urban design, or the now sense of place element, where there's a lot of, it talks about the connectivity between uses, whether it's connecting neighborhoods to activity centers, or to activity centers, to the parks, to the schools, and so forth.
Okay. So because you shared that, my thought is that, again, there's a lot more in the plan than what's being lifted here. So I'm not going to think that this is the all end all. It's just when you're making this presentation, it gives me the perception that perhaps it's not important. Is
Right.
it not part? Is it?
Also, there's a lot of text that reflects, and I went back to this slide here where it says promote redevelopment. A lot of that deals with redevelopment along underperforming corridors.
Okay.
Such as Canton Road, Veterans Memorial, and so forth.
Okay, very good. Can you go to the next slide, whoever's doing the presentation? Thank you. Can you go to the next one? Okay. So community facilities, this is public service facilities, or is this all?
It can be, in this sense, it is parks, water. Yes, for the most part, it's public service facilities.
Okay, and again, I'm just of the thought that the actual comprehensive plan has more detail for other services which aren't mentioned here, and these don't necessarily
There
have
is a lot
precedence
more
over.
information in the actual plan.
Okay, okay. Well, with that, thank you, Phil. Just wanted
Thank
to
you.
put that on the record, that
Yes,
that
ma'am.
there's a lot of other significant aspects of this plan which may not have been shared.
Commissioner Burrow, do you have any comments?
Not really,
Okay.
not today.
Commissioner Ott, do you have something? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. And just the remaining timeline for how we're gonna take this and work with the board on kind of seeing this through completion. Today is the work session as it related to the overall comprehensive plan. We have public hearing number 3 coming up on August 8th. On August 22nd, we're gonna have the 4th public hearing. After that, we will close public comment and then prepare the memorandum as it relates to the draft changes to the document. People can still, of course, comment on it. We're not saying people can't comment, but it'll be the closing of the official public comment period where we can actually incorporate those changes into the draft that we're presenting back to the Board of Commissioners.
Have we considered taking one of these public comment periods outside this boardroom? Like the one on August 22nd, doing it somewhere out in the community?
We can certainly do that, sir. I would note that we have already done approximately 10 public hearings out around the entire community. That's been a really important part of it, to hear from the community throughout the process.
I'm just saying that now that we have the final product,
We're certainly welcome to do it. I think the rationale is, since this ultimate decision is now going to be in the board's hand, we wanted to make sure the board was hearing the public comments that are coming forward.
Okay.
And not, rather than having it just be filtered through staff again, sir.
okay, all right.
But if that's what the board's direction is,
No,
we're certainly
no.
happy to do that.
I'm getting the look.
So on the 31st, we will release the memorandum to the Board of Commissioners as it relates to the changes in the draft plan, while also placing the revised draft online for public consumption. On September the 12th, we will request the Board of Commissioners to authorize us to submit the draft plan to the Atlanta Regional Commission. At the same hearing, we'll ask the board to recertify our service delivery strategy with the 6 cities of Cobb County. As long as we complete that by September 12th, we will be okay with our October 31st deadline as it relates to maintaining our qualified local government status with the state of Georgia. And then after we receive comments and make additional amendments, at a date to be determined, we will bring forward the plan for approval by the Board of Commissioners. After the board finally approves the draft 2040 plan, we will make a full replacement of the 2030 plan, and this will be the new policy document guiding decisions within the county. With that,
Chairman, I
sir,
have a
we'll be happy-
question I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes.
Dana, going back to the slide, the August 22nd date, this is the last date that the public can provide any comments During a public comment period or even email or notification of
The-
staff?
This plan can be changed all the way through the date that the Board of Commissioners finally adopts the plan document. In addition to that, we do our annual updates to the comprehensive plan. So even after the board makes final approval and approves the 2040 plan, there's still going to be opportunities to tweak it and make amendments to it through our annual process.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to provide public comment but couldn't make it to a public hearing, is there a general email address that they can send comments to?
Yes, Commissioner?
Very good.
If it is right, if you go to the community development website, you can just send it to community development.
They
They
can
can send it
click
to
on
me. I'll
something.
make sure it gets to Phil and Jason. They can send it
Okay.
directly to the planning department. We all have emails that would be easily accessible for people to provide us their input.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burrow?
Will the final approval be in January like our normal comp plan, or is that to be determined based on ARC and board approval?
That is to be determined. Once we receive the response from the Atlanta Regional Commission, we'll work with the Board of Commissioners on how best you want to see this move forward. And I think it depends on the comfort level of the board and how many more additional changes you may want to see to the document before we bring it forward for adoption.
Okay. So the committee's finished with all their work?
That is correct. All of the committees and planning commission are complete now. This is a decision that would ultimately be in the hands of the Board of Commissioners, who is the final policymaking board for the community.
Okay, thank you, Dana.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear the budget on sports services.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, and County Manager. Today, you're going to hear from Support Services Agency. As you know, we are the agency that makes sure the county employee gets what they need to do their job. You're going to hear a lot about needs today. You're going to hear about our FY 18 needs, but you're also going to hear about some long-term needs and some short-term needs that we think that you need to know moving forward as you consider budgets as we move forward the next couple years. Staff has done a lot of work. They've gone out on their own with other departments within the county and developed a lot of information that's going to help us in the future make a lot of decisions on where we need to spend our dollars and what we need to do. I will commend all the department directors. They've done a great job with including employees within their organization to get all this information together. So you're going to have there's a lot of information that's sitting in front of you right now on a PowerPoint slide. You're going to have questions after today that you're going to think about. We're more than happy to come and walk the halls and talk to you about any of the information that we're providing you today. We did try to combine other departments that you've heard.
Why is Scott still an interim?
Wow. He just is at this point.
Haven't we hired him already?
We've hired him as the interim director for. Be happy to talk to you about that
Okay,
after this. Okay?
Thought maybe there was something.
Positions are already there from John Rita. That didn't get unfunded when Rita.
That did not. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Okay,
Okay.
Scott, wherever you are, I'm for you, man.
Have you closed the
It is.
process?
It is.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious.
Okay. So today you're going to hear from Sharon. You're going to hear from Scott. You're going to hear from Al. You're going to hear from Joe, and you're going to hear from Stephen about a lot of their needs within their department. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time standing up here. I am going to come up at the end and talk about the number. So kind of close it up. This is the agency budget. They'll be going over more of this as they go over to their department. The next one is the actual I should say not my budget, that's Calander's budget. She takes care of me, as you can see what it is. And we did ask for a little increase for registration fees and memberships. Okay, next. All right, first one is Sharon Stanley. She has 5 minutes, and so I do have her where I can, I'm gonna shock her if she goes way over. All right, Sharon.
I know, exactly. Good afternoon. You set the clock. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Hey, it's important stuff. No, I know. I am going to go over the Information Services Department with you this afternoon. Basically, we have 6 divisions and a program manager office in the department. We have the administrative department or division, which actually deals with our finance, our HR, our contracts, our vendor. As you know, as IT, we have a lot of those in there, and all the HR needs for my staff and the department. We also have in my department, where I'm not sure everybody's familiar with that, the records, the printing, the mailing for the entire county is also another division in the department. And then we have 2 client services division, and they handle all of the applications in IT for the county, and they're divided up primarily by the departments or the agencies that they support. And we have an infrastructure team or a tech ops group and GIS group, which is under Ed, and that one basically provides all the infrastructure for the county, whether that be the telecommunications, the data center, the voice, the Wi-Fi, anything IT infrastructure under the county. And then, as you're familiar with, a web portal just recently moved into the department as well. I have all of those division managers and directors with me here this morning, and I have to say they're pretty much best team I've ever worked with in my 40-something years. So I wanted to just get that in there while we were on there. So the next slide I have for you, I wanted to give you a 10-year view on the growth of IT at Cobb County. I'm not going to go over every one of these, but I did want to highlight a few. If you look under public safety devices supported, I want to mention that doesn't include the PCs and the laptops. And those are actually included in the MDCs. Those are actually included in the count above. But this includes things like their mobile routers, their body cameras, the cameras in cars. You'll notice we had supported 9 of those 10 years ago. We're now supporting over 1,000, almost 1,300 of those devices. I also want to point out the internet bandwidth up there. If you look at that, this is a significant indicator of the amount of IT growth in the county. We'll see we had 3 megabytes back in 2007. We now have over 2.3 gigabytes of connectivity and bandwidth for the internet that we have in the county. Network devices, you'll see, have grown we support about 700 more network devices than we did 10 years ago. Data storage, another one which you're familiar with because you've heard about this quite frequently with the body cameras and the other things we have in the county that require additional storage. 10 years ago, we had 50 terabytes of data for storage. Now we've got over 1,529 terabytes of data. Wireless sites, this is another big one that I wanted to point out, because if you look on there, you'll see that we had Wi-Fi for the employees. We had 2 sites in the county 10 years ago that had Wi-Fi for the employees. Today, we have 120 facilities and area and locations in the county that have employee and public Wi-Fi. So in all of our facilities in the county, we provide Wi-Fi access to the citizens. Just a note, last year or the year and a half ago, we separated that out. Those 2 were actually on the same network. So that actually is 2 separate networks so that they don't merge because for security reasons at this time. GIS mapping, I want to point that one out. That's an area that's grown leaps and bounds in 10 years. You'll see we had 4 mapping sites we maintained 10 years ago, and we're up to 48 of those right now. I want to point that one out because that's such a significant area, and this is the one where we have a lot of citizen usage. We get about 25,000 hits on that per month. This is the one, if you remember the September 23rd, big day for us, when we had the outage in the data center. We received over 1,000 calls a week on this until we got GIS back up. It's a big area for businesses to conduct their business daily, as well as citizens who hit this quite frequently. The other one I want to point out on there is the OnBase, our document management system. You'll see we had 684 users 10 years ago. We're over 2,000 today and continuing to grow. But even bigger, we've got 11.7 million documents that are stored in that system today. And finally, if you look at the last line, On there, that's my staff in IT. You'll see that although we went down in the recession, we are back to pre-recession levels in my staff. If you look, you'll see that even though we have all these growth factors have increased significantly over the last 10 years, the IT, FT, and staff has remained flat. So next, and you can just go through this one. I kind of talked about this one when I did the org chart. So we provide in the IT department, I'm going to talk first about IT, and then I'll talk about records management and mail services afterwards. But we support all of the agencies and departments and elected offices in the county for IT. That includes their infrastructure, applications, and equipment. But it's also from all stages, whether it be the beginning thought of what's going to roll out there to the deployment, the design, as well as we operate many of those systems going forward. And we support 24/7 for all of the departments out there. I want to talk about that one a little bit because 10 years ago, 24/7 for us meant supporting public safety 24/7. But now pretty much with the services we provide to the county, with the expectation that you see below that, citizens expect to have everything 24/7 on mobile devices, anytime, anywhere. So that's kind of the environment we're working on in an increasing and growing demand. So, this slide, I want to talk a little bit about, we are not a revenue generating department primarily. I'll talk a little bit about where we do generate revenue, but we are a revenue impacting department, and we collaborate with all of the other departments to roll out quite a few things that do impact revenue. And this slide, I wanted to kind of talk about a few of the just big impacts we've had over the last 2 years. Public Wi-Fi in 120 facilities. I've talked about that one. Go ahead. And then on the link buses, although that is a contracted out service, we actually had to provide the connectivity and some of the stuff in the buses for those 190 link services to have Wi-Fi. Court Connect, access to court records. We provide that 24/7 now to all citizens. We've already hit about 18,000 hits per month, and it's only been out there about 3 months. It started with about 200, and now they're up to 18,000. So it's a very demanded service from us. Go ahead. Civil case filings. This is between the officer and the citizens in the, I'm sorry, let me take that back. We've enabled civil case filings for 24/7. That's been hit for about 200 of those per month already. That's rolled out. Go ahead next, I'm sorry. Electronic subpoena, this is one I was talking about. We've enabled electronic subpoena, which has eliminated basically the need to print and mail those subpoenas. That's between the officer and the civilian employees at either the county or the agency level. It's an exception now, and we have to roll those out. Go ahead. Online open records request. If you remember, we rolled that out in conjunction with the county attorney's office several months ago. Already we're up to 200 hits per month on that. And it's not only just giving the citizen access to that all the time and more open access, but it also has helped us to manage those better and keep track of it. Are we hitting the deadline for getting that data out? Configured over 200 body cameras, outfitted 189 public safety vehicles. Go ahead. Online property tax returns. In this season, we rolled that out, and we had approximately 1,900 of those filed online. Business license renewals. This is the first year we've done any of that online. It is available 24/7, and there's a small portion of the business licenses available this year. We're working with community development to expand that type of businesses that can use that. We had 996 people use that. Go ahead, sorry. And then we've had, with some of the changes we've done in the sign permitting, we've seen a 67% increase in filing sign permitting online. So IT basically is an enabler for many of these, and I'm going to go ahead on to the next slide. Because the next slide basically tells you on the revenue side of the house, the applications and automation we rolled out that has to do with revenue bringing processes, or processes that bring in revenue. I want to point out the little green emoji you see on this slide, where you see this on this slide and the next slide. Those are a new service or an automated service we provided to our citizens and our businesses in the county over the last 2 years, something that they didn't get there itself. So, and I also want to talk about revenue generating just a little bit. We do in GIS I said we have some revenue generating areas. GIS generates some revenue. We get about 60,000 per year and growing when the tax assessor's parcels increase. That we grow as well. That primarily is businesses that pay for that. Citizens getting a small amount of data, a lot of that's free. But when businesses want large volumes of data to build, for example, they're coming into the area, if they are not specifically coming in as a collaborative effort and partnership with the county, then we charge them for that data.
Sharon, I have a quick question for you
Yes,
on
ma'am.
that. For where you're charging fees that are related to other departments, do you have a service fee that goes to your department from that?
No, we actually pull and send out that data. That is when they ask for the data, either in, online or in a tape. So.
Okay, interesting.
And then we also, I want to go to the next slide. Did I answer your question? We don't, it's not a service fee. They're paying for the data itself. We don't add a service fee. It's more, we have to laminate it, we have to pull it, and we just, the data is valuable data, and they get a lot out of it, so.
Yeah, I
We-
guess in
we-
my
we
mind, I
set-
would
maybe I
presume
should
I'm
set-
just.
Maybe I should tell you how we kind of set our rates also. We went across the country. Not every GIS group charges. We are probably one of the more robust GIS systems, not just in the state, but in the country. So we have large and many and numerous layers of data that are very valuable. We provide a lot of that free to the citizen, but there's some of that data when they want to pull like large amounts of it, or there's data that's not necessarily something you would use unless you're building, you know, a complex or building you know, a living community. So for that, we basically, to form how much we charge for that, we went across the country to see how much people were charging, so that we're not overcharging citizens. We don't make a lot out of this. Nothing, it doesn't pay for GIS, you know. It does pay for the training, some of the training for the folks, and we spend this data across the, and answer to your question there, this data, for example, when we go to training that we went to like last week at the conference, we pay for all the departments out of that, all the GIS folks and the other departments to go to that as well.
Okay.
Does that help? No, I can tell.
It does. I just, when I saw some of what was included in the chart, I presumed that I'm going to that department, and even if they have something online, that revenue's going directly to that department. Not that any of it's going to IS, even though it's being done online.
This little 60K does.
Just
It
that for
comes
the
into the general
GIS.
GIS bucket, which is under us, that we use to pay for things. I don't want to call them incidentals because they're not, but training, you know, things that actually are provided all across the departments to their GIS staff.
Okay. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for there to be
Did,
technology.
did she say bucket?
No, I'm sorry, no
did not
bucket.
say
It's a cup, it's a cup. It's a cup.
Commissioner,
Still parks.
to address your question, we do indirect costs. So for the services that like IS provides and other support services, we do charge those departments, and then they pay in to help support that service. So for example, any
Okay.
services that Sharon provides to water or an outside fund, it would be part of the indirect cost transfer into the general fund to help pay
Interesting.
for those services.
Okay, so it's an internal cost to.
Yes.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am. I get it, all right. And this slide is additional accomplishments and things we rolled out this year, that we've rolled out this year that are not necessarily revenue impacting, but they are impacting to citizens and provide, just note all the little green emojis. That's how many new things we've rolled out for our citizens and businesses of Cobb County. So, all right. I do want to talk a little bit, as we talked about revenue generating, you know, we are looking for other areas of opportunity. As we build a new data center, we're looking at potentially, you know, there are a lot of cities and municipalities looking for areas to actually colo for their disaster recovery sites. So we're looking at potentially creating an area where we can do colo and provide electricity, air conditioning, that type of thing, you know, backup power for other organizations. So, all right. This is essentially our 3-year spending history for IT, for the IS department. You'll see that it's increased about 8.5% to 7.9%. That's kind of backwards because it's 8.5% the first part, but the second part 7.9%. But if you look at that, you see most of that is personnel services, about $1 million of it. And you remember I was flat in personnel services. I haven't really brought that many on. So that actually is increases in, you know, benefits and pensions and salaries. It's not for additional personnel. If you also look up there at the software hardware maintenance agreements, that has increased some as we bring on additional services that they require maintenance after the first year warranty period. I do want to point out the voice and digital charges. I want you to see that they're pretty much flat. If you remember from that first slide in growth, I talked about how significant our voice and data circuits have grown in size and capacity across the county. The way we've been able to keep that flat is through keeping a pretty good track on what can be disconnected, but also negotiating lower rates with the telecoms, or when there's a cheaper type of circuit come out, we'll switch over to that type of circuit. And the last thing I wanted to point out on this slide,
Sharon?
yes, sir.
Oh, no, I'm waiting until she gets to that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And then the other thing I wanted to point out on here is the reserves. At the end of the recession, we were pretty far, we had a lot of aging and out of support systems. So with the reserves, we were able to bring in, if you remember, our data backup solution was an old tape solution, tape to tape, which would not have done us well if we had to recover. But we have since converted, and that was paid for out of these reserves, to a disk-to-disk data backup solution, which allows us to quickly recover data, which has been very good for any times we've had any outages with that. So the other things on that were also mobile device management. We purchased a mobile device management system. Yes, sir.
On the mail services, let's talk about a little bit of what that is. And I would think, or I would hope that with the automation that we're working towards, that we might be able to kind of move away from some of the mail services, or what exactly are we paying for with that?
This is mail services for the entire county. So this is anytime, this is what you'll see on my challenge sheet, because some of it's not able to be predicted well by the various departments and agencies. For example, in the tax commissioner's office or different areas, a mandate will come down from the state. Elections is another big one. They'll come down and say, this has to be sent to every citizen in the county. We do have an initiative where we're trying to work with the departments to get it where we can actually get citizens to sign in for email delivery of some of those things anywhere we can, but there's still a lot of them that the state requires us to mail out. And there are a lot of our citizens who won't go get it in email. So this is for all the agencies. It's a challenge for me because the departments try to predict what it's going to cost each year, but it's an area where we have unexpected expenses when things come down, like large mailings.
Just piggybacking off of that, I think IS handles mail, like paper mail.
Yes, ma'am. So I talked about at the beginning how I have 6 departments and a program manager, but that one of those departments, if you notice, was records, mailing, and printing. So Larry Walker is back here in his shop, is actually in my department. So it's in information services. It's not the IT portion, but it's in information services, which is my department.
Interesting.
And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that after we get through the IS portion. And I know Eddie's sitting there getting impatient, let me get through. No, so let me, but yeah, yes, ma'am, we do. All right, in this slide, I wanna point out, this is the one that presents the proposed budget for 18, as well as those things we requested that were not included in the proposed budget for 18. And you'll see that those for my department are the $13,439.913 there. I'm going to actually talk about that a little bit and give you some more details, but I'm also going to break down some of the capital. So I want to talk about the capital first. If you'll look at the capital, that 16,148, if you hit the thing for me. Yeah, that's sorry, that big number, that's 16 million, not 1,000, I'm sorry. That's it, yeah, I wish it was 1,000, no, I don't. That $16 million figure, I'm gonna first talk about that. That includes 2 things. If you go to the next slide, that's actually broken down into capital improvements, which are new things, right? Things that don't exist out there, and capital replacements are replacing aging systems with that, and that's what this slide really breaks down. And so I'm gonna go ahead and go to that, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about what that is currently in the proposed budget. I'm gonna talk first, if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk first about that $4 million figure. These are the things that are in the proposed 2018 budget. The enterprise content management system, that is considered improvement because the things we roll out are new, like the contract management system we're rolling out. The other 3 things here, the MDCs for the public safety, PCs and printer replacement across the county, and GIS implementation are in the replacement fund. So that's what's in the proposed budget. If you go on to the next one, these are the things we've requested that are not, were not in the proposed budget that's going forward, but were requested by IS. I'm not going to go through this entire list because you can read it, but I do want to point out a couple. The cybersecurity, you'll see that's there. That's the one I brought up forward when you asked for one of our number one, concerns and earlier this year and what we were looking for funding for. I also want to point out that $9,307,000 for the Unified Court Case Management System, that is an addition to the 2 million we have in the SPOS program that's dedicated to that. That is the system that we're working on with all the courts and the sheriff's office and the DA and the solicitor that will bring one system across the county for them to use and eventually, I state eventually, replace about 18 to 20 of the systems we currently use. But that is still there. The next one actually has to do with the printing that we do, and not in Larry's shop, but actually in operations. We send out the majority of our printing. Larry has outsourced as much as he can for some of that, but we have some things that cannot be sent out due to the format they come into. One of the out of our programs, and one of those is business licenses. So we actually have to do the mass printing and mailings out for some of those things. That printer is, if you go over to the data center, is about bit the dust. It's an IBM old printer. They've about fixed it as many times as they can. So we need to replace that printer. We're still trying to see if we can change and find somebody who will support our formats. But the last one on here I wanted to point out was the batteries down at the end there. Those are in the current data center. It's for the uninterrupted power source we have over there that runs us when there are power outages. And also provides a stable power source for electronic equipment. We had expected to be into the data center build by now, but as you know, we're linked to a building when the building occurs before we start the new one. And so these batteries we're 2 years past when we kind of had expected to start building that center. So these are going to have to be replaced before we get the center. They're 19 years old, so the batteries.
Sharon,
batteries.
on the
Yes, sir.
on the printer.
Yes, sir.
Now I know that with the desktop computers, we do a lease option with Dell. Is there an option? I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure this printer does everything, folding, stamping, and all
It
that
does.
other stuff, right? But is there a way that instead of having one all powerful printer, is there a way to do it similar to some kind of lease arrangement?
I think we looked into that to see if we could lease one of these. It has some specialty functions. It's that front end program we send into it that most companies out there are not compatible with. And there's very little equipment out there that will do it. And I don't know, was that an option with IBM?
Okay, I was just
We will-
curious
we
because I
will.
know
We'll check into
I know
that
we
one.
do the lease on all the desktop
We do,
units.
we do.
Right.
This is a specialty type, but I think it's certainly an option we'll look into. Yes, sir.
And what kind of savings do we expect, or efficiency do you expect by, implementing this judicial unified court case management system?
I knew you were gonna ask me that.
You said it's gonna replace 28 different systems?
Yes, sir.
So is there a cost savings there, or what? I mean, I'm missing something here.
There will be at some point once we get off of all of them, but that was probably, I'd say, a 5 to 6 year process. of getting
Mr.
off
Chairman,
those
and
systems.
I had a meeting with the judges last week, as I know we all did. And they specifically talked about this, and a lot of it's how the courts are managed.
It's new
They
capability.
cannot go into specific case information while they're in the court if they want to look at documents. And about, I don't know, Rob, how long it was, maybe 5, 6 years ago, we were in a similar situation where the entire county was on a version of Word and, yes, because the courts, the entire county was stuck on a version of Windows and Word because that was the only two that could work together to print the court documents. And so I think we have to be real careful not to get in that situation again where the entire county gets held behind because of courts.
So are there like grants or something going to help us with this, or this is just strictly funded out of our wallet?
This is money that we have to find. And I'll let the county manager go into some history with you later if he'd like to.
Okay, thanks.
So, okay. Any questions on any of those capital costs? Okay. I also wanted to, so if you look, I want to point out that figure down at the bottom, that 11,702. So these are unfunded requirements that, we put forward in 18. The next slide, I wanted to bring this up because as I mentioned, we are very driven by the other department's requirements, because that's what we do, is support them. So if the other departments bring in any IT, I gave you the requirements we submitted last year for 18, which were enterprise-wide requirements, but I pulled out of the presentations, and we also implement the majority of these and assist them with these, but they also have funding in there that they have requested areas that are unfunded in the department presentations you've seen so far. I wanted to pull all that together into one location. Although I haven't captured all the costs, for example, the one for the police report, we're not sure exactly what we have to do and all of that, and we haven't finished that analysis, so I can't tell you how much it's gonna cost to implement all of the technology they've recommended. But for a large portion of it, especially that's requested for 18, I've tried to pull it together in one location. So there's another $9 million worth of IT identified in the various department presentations that you've already seen that is unfunded at this time for 18 and beyond. So, and that's on this page. I'm not gonna, if you have any questions on any of the particular ones, I'll answer them, but I'm not gonna go through each one. So challenges for us, we talked about this one, the maintenance fees. As we roll out additional IT in the county, it comes with maintenance fees once the warranty. We usually try to get the warranty for as long as we can, but there are additional maintenance fees. We, in 2018, requested an additional $296,679. 156,679 of that was actually requested when we presented the budget. But the 140,000 when we upgraded the VoIP network, although we we indicated we needed that, we didn't need the maintenance dollars till 18. That was indicated in the agenda item, but now 18 is here. So those dollars are unfunded as well. So that's for maintenance. No, sir, that's an annual. These are operating budget. So, and maintenance, as I said, we do everything we can to reduce our maintenance from our vendors. We try to get lower in the maintenance negotiations, and where possible, if it's not a critical system, as it reaches and gets older and we know more about it, we try to actually pick up some of that on and change to a pay by the drink, I guess you'd call it, model, when we think we can support it ourselves most of the time. I can't do that with some of our critical systems that if they're down, because if I go to a pay by the drink, we no longer, in many cases, are 24/7 or 1 hour response. Your response time goes up as you do a pay by the drink model. So, landline, voice, and data charges. When we, if you'll look at that, we upgraded the parks facilities back from an agenda item back in 14 and implemented it in 15. But the funds, although it was approved by the board, the funds were never put into the budget in 16 and beyond. We were able to cover that in 17 due to the audit and the savings I addressed that we brought in by getting rid of lines and negotiating lower prices. I don't think we're going to be able to cover that in 18 and beyond, and so that's a shortage that we have to pay, or the circuits go away. So
So if I'm hearing correctly, this cost was approved by the board,
yes, sir, way back.
this board right here.
Yes, sir.
So
Except
this
for you.
board directed this cost be implemented. And yet somebody short-circuited the board and said no?
No, they didn't short circuit. It's just that it was an oversight. It didn't get put in there. And when they talked to us, we had funds because we made a savings. So you don't want to move funds in if I had the funds, but it does need to be planned going out forward
$187,000.
per year.
That's recurrent?
Yes, sir. That's for the circuits that go to the parks.
But that's always something approved by the board.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, keep going. You're making my day here.
Sorry. It's all right. I do want to talk a little bit about this one and the slide before it, those voice charges. I'm sorry. Okay, go right ahead. Sorry. I know, I'm sorry. All right, security, you've already seen this one, so I won't stick on it. I'll just say that you know that the threat's getting worse. We've got to do something here. The cost of building our own of increasing our staff and building us a 24-hour security operations center just isn't feasible for counties and states. They're already looking at managed services. We're looking at that as well, partnering with a vendor who would provide managed security services, with a 24/7 monitoring, the types of things we need there. So, any questions on that one? Okay, the next one is the staffing. I want to talk a little bit about the staffing. I mentioned that we hadn't grown in 10 years. We haven't. I wanted, even though our requirements have grown, I wanted to put up the benchmark there, of us in the counties that we are comparable with, Gwinnett and Fulton, staffing both outdistance ours quite a bit. If we had asked for positions when, it was solicited, I think about a year ago, this, I'm not gonna go heavily through each one. The one was for, the Acela. GIS, the increased requirements coming for GIS. We have been able to cover that with interns we try everything we can with interns from Kennesaw State University, but our requirements are growing in leaps and bounds from, the departments as well as from the, external citizens and businesses for GIS data. The business analysts, we have the SPLOS, number of SPLOS projects we've got to roll out. We just don't have the people to do it. That's why some of them haven't started yet. We can only roll out so many at a time. Web architect, we just moved that group into our team. I know you're gonna say that just moved over, but with the new web portal, as well as the demand for applications and open data portal, a new GIS portal, transparency, the dashboards we're looking at rolling out, we need additional staff in that area. Computer operator one, that one is one that we need over in the data center. We have our data center staffing only allows us much of the time to have one person in the data center, which after hours to me is not an ideal scenario to have one person in the data center. I don't like having one person there in an area that has so much equipment and potential for things to occur. So I'm looking for an additional operator there. Tax, basically with all of the new mandates coming down, I mentioned that tax is one we have difficulties predicting, but we have to make the adaptations to the applications and the software every time a new mandate comes down from the state. We need additional staffing for that. The solutions analyst, the DA and the solicitor actually requested that we staff up for them. The way we handle the courts right now is our team spreads across the courts due to just due to staffing and requirements. But there's enough in the DA's and the solicitors area that they want a dedicated person that actually would be over there to assist them with video analysis and digital analysis. And then the sheriff has also requested an additional person. So. This recaps the IT portion of this presentation. I'm going to recap it again at the end when I give you the records portion, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I'll recap again. If you go to the records portion, Commissioner Cupid, you brought this one up. We have all of the hard copy records retention in the county. That's driven, how long we maintain those is driven by laws and policies and regulations from the state or federal. We support all the open records requests that come in for any of that data that are in those warehouses. We have one main warehouse and two satellite warehouses, and they're all full. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the challenges. We average, though, we don't just store that data. We average about 2,100 requests per month from the agency departments to pull that data, get it over to them, and then refile it when it comes back. The majority of those coming out of the judicial system. And then the mail, we process all incoming and outgoing mail. If you go to the next slide, you'll see how much. We process about 4 million pieces of mail a year that come into the county. This is our accomplishment slide. You'll also see our mail center renovation. If you haven't been over to see that, next door, we were in a small, almost a closet size area with the staff that was doing mail. They moved to a larger center. But primarily, we've also did it for security reasons. There's a lot of things that go through that office that we felt should be better protected there. So, and then record services, you'll see that the request per year is about 17,000, which matches up with the other. And the biggest thing on there was that our storage requirements are outpacing our destruction cycles. So that's thus my challenge is we're out of warehouse space. You've noted in several of the meetings I've been to before where we've got data stored in the state courthouse. We've got data stored at the medical examiner's office. We have to free up space for them to bring something in. So we've looked at several things, cost of purchasing a new warehouse, of leasing one, and digitizing the records. You'll see they're all pretty significant. These are estimates, so they're pretty high. Because we basically go out and say, can you give us an estimate? I don't have an RFP for these or anything because they're not right now budgeted. So, and our warehouse is not climate controlled, and there's some pretty significant, not just paper records, but other things are in there as well. So, and I want to point out that the reason to digitize, the reason that cost is so high is it's not just a matter of scanning. They have to be indexed and scanned and separated from in some cases, hard physical evidence that was put into the same box. These are records that go way, way back. The additional budget request there, 20,000 for printing, 30 for lease payments. That's for the multifunction copiers that we converted to several years ago and saved money. And then 52,000 for postage fees, which gets me then into the summary slide for the records management. The unfunded portion there, the proposed was 2,371,631. We requested an additional 102,200 that did not get into the budget. And then I want to go to the last slide. My last one, yay. This is the recap of what we've presented to you in this deck. If you look at this, you'll see the top portion has to do with the IT that we have requested, out of the IS department. The proposed budget you see is 22,388,550. There's an additional 13,439,913, and that's 22 mils, sorry, that we have requested that is not in the proposed FY18 budget at this time. And then on that bottom line, that's the that 9 mil is that came out of the other department's presentations that's unfunded, for a grand total of $22,582,013 of requirements that are unfunded in FY18. Questions?
Sharon, if you had a wish list, what would be your top priority?
Commissioner, I'd have to go back and look at that to pull that
It's
out.
a lot, all of them. I
It's
mean,
it's
I
a
didn't
lot
see
of,
anything that
there are a lot of
seemed
top priorities, if you ask me.
insignificant.
Security is a top priority, but
The
I've also got systems out
cybersecurity?
there that aren't gonna run anymore next year if I don't get them replaced. So, I'd have to go back and look through that with the agency heads, because, as I mentioned earlier, we're an enabler. There's nothing that stands alone, so I'd have to see from the departments and the agencies where their top priorities are.
For things that come up, let's say you have equipment that's not going to be able to operate next year, is fund balance typically?
We have in the past, bought that you saw that 926,000 that we did in 16. That was for stuff that basically couldn't go any further, that we brought in and purchased out of fund balance. But that's some of the stuff you see, Mr. Chairman, in that increased maintenance costs that we don't have funding for.
Because part of my concern is, if so much of your organization's being funded through fund balance, and then there's this ongoing cost, it's sometimes hard to capture that because fund balance is the one-time money.
It is, and
And,
we,
without budgeting,
yes, ma'am.
for it, it's just.
Yes, ma'am. In those, we try to, in the agenda items, we bring forward an agenda, in all of our agenda items, we put the going forward maintenance cost in the
Okay.
funding line. So it's always brought out, and put there, but, that doesn't make it go away.
That's fine.
All right. Sorry.
I'll just put that on the table, Commissioner Weatherford.
Help me with the unified court system for $9 million.
Yes, sir. That is an estimate.
That's, ma'am,
It is an estimate. That is a big system.
I understand that, but it wouldn't be all in one budget cycle, would it not? I mean, if it takes 5 years or 6 years to eliminate other duplicate systems, we're not gonna pay a vendor $9 million that takes 5 years to
When they
implement.
deliver the system we have to commit the dollars up front, I guess you would say. So their payments will be done across the years. That is absolutely true.
So the budget impact per year will be nowhere near $9 million, I don't think.
No, sir.
Well, that makes it a little bit
But
different.
to build that system is not 5 years. To build that system is probably another 2-year process. We're already, if you remember in the RFP, we got the group putting together the RFP. After the RFP goes on the street, I'm guessing it's a 2-year process. They'd like it to be faster, but a 2-year process to build and roll out that system.
Yeah, but I can't imagine a system of that magnitude being beta tested in 2 years.
That's what my team tells me. They say it's
Now,
gonna
look,
take.
you're all really good, but nobody's
Yeah.
that good in this
The
world.
courts want this one really quick.
Well, that's fine, but they're not paying a dime for it,
No,
all
sir.
right?
But,
So, They-
I guess I should,
right now, they don't have a dime budgeted for that. They're expecting us to pay the whole thing,
Yes, sir.
right? So when people step into the, start showing me their wallet, then they're players.
Chairman, I would just share that the courts provide a significant amount of return to our general fund from the costs that get assessed to those that come through the court system. And that there have been times when they've come and said, can we get those funds returned back to the courts for them to do certain things? I would be careful in how we.
And what,
make that
what are those
statement.
general, Bill, enlighten me as to what that return is.
There's a variety of revenue sources that get generated from the court system,
All
fines
right.
and forfeitures being one of the major ones. But we do see a lot of returns, or a lot of revenue into the general fund from the elected officials, for court systems.
Because that wasn't one of the slides I had as I've been going out here, during the budget presentation.
I'm sorry?
I haven't seen the revenues, I didn't see that revenue stream as part of the budget presentation we've been given.
Yeah, we lumped it into large categories. You have fines and forfeitures being one of the major ones that we attribute most frequently to the court
Right, but that's
systems.
going down.
That is going down. We do have a few others, intangible recording fees and things like that, that would be generated from other elected officials within the general fund. But primarily, when we refer to the court system, that's the first that comes to mind. And fines and
All right, so the bucket that I've been presenting over the last 10 days has been $8 million for the court system. Okay, other than personnel costs.
Yes, sir. That's the adopted budget that we always refer to.
All right,
When you
so-
put that in the bucket, that block, that is what we have as proposed.
All right, and so how much of revenue do they generate? Do they give back to that 8 million?
I can get that for you, get you a total. I know I got Commissioner Weatherford a breakout of the expenditures, but we'll get you the revenues that tie into that as well.
Okay, hold on a second.
Well, I guess, which court are we talking about? Because we have several courts,
This
plus
is
we
for
have
all.
DA, solicitor,
Right.
clerk of, blah, 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 and I'm looking at the list that you provided, and I'm somewhere around 20-something million dollars or more for all of those services. I'm pretty sure they don't generate that much back.
I do not believe so, sir, no. I mean, that's the case for a lot of departments that aren't major revenue generators. The vast majority of the county's revenue is generated from the tax commissioner's office. I mean, that's just the generic nature of the general
I
fund.
know, I'm just trying to give the chairman a little bit of, I don't think it's anywhere near.
I agree. It would not cover the costs.
Yes, I would just know that they do contribute.
They do.
They do contribute.
The other thing I'd want to point out on the court case management system is that the system, they're on multiple different systems now, but the largest system over there that we have is aging and would have had to been upgraded. It would not have been $9 million. But it is not satisfactory, and they are not happy with it. And it would have had to been upgraded because it's become obsolete and does not meet the majority of the requirements. It would have had to been upgraded within the next year or two if we had not done this. So there would have been some costs there. But then it was decided, like I said, a unified, that was a decision made at a higher level than me, but that a unified system would be better there.
All right, well, I'm just looking at this chart here. Last year, we budgeted, the court system cost us $136 million out of our.
Everybody.
That's right, all the court systems, that's correct. Sheriff too, I'm sorry, yeah. So all the judicial part and the support costs us, the budget was $136 million out of a $383 million operating budget. That's roughly about what? 35%. And, look, and I know we gotta do our part, okay, I'm not picking on them. But a $9 million cost dropped in the middle of what we already know is a recognized shortfall is a big chunk of change.
Yes, sir.
So the question is, how do we do our part, all right? As partners, all of us, how do we all do our part to achieve this goal? That's my whole point. So,
And let me say about the 9 million, we'll have, this budget presentation is prior to, we did an RFI on this, which basically goes out to the vendors who provide this type of system and said, what do you think this would cost us? This was a guess, it's an educated guess, but it's a guess. We expect within 2 months to have a better estimate back in. I'm hoping it's lower, because of the competition that's out there, but without an estimate that's closer, I wanted to make sure that we gave you what, we think
Right.
it's gonna be.
well, look, we all know that we have to update an antiquated system.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I get that part. And we certainly have to be seen as to continue this partnership that has been really a good partnership between all of us and the judicial system here. but because of circumstances outside their control, we're now being asked to support something which is a requirement. It's not a nice to have, it's a requirement. The question is, how do we all find a way to do this, given the circumstance that are presented to us? So, okay, thanks.
And Commissioner Cupid, if you can let me again, you asked me what's the top priority. It'd be hard to give you several in there, but I can tell you my top priority right now is security, because it's the one that's the most important, and it's not compared to the rest of the bucket. It's a significant amount, but it's a small amount.
Was that the cybersecurity line
Yes,
item?
ma'am, it's a
Okay.
350,000. And that gets us through a year of a contract with a vendor that would come in and help us decide what we needed to do and actually take care of doing some of it.
Okay.
So, any other questions, sir? I'm like shrinking. Any other questions?
Well, no, mine's not a question. I mean, it sounds all dire and like, that nothing's been addressed or accounted for.
A lot has.
How much, let's
A
talk about
lot
what's in
has.
SPOST. How much money did you get in SPOST?
We got 30 million in SPOST, and that, we are implementing a lot of the things in SPOST, and you've got the list, the
Right.
spreadsheet I sent out. But the only part that will increase is that maintenance cost, because SPOST doesn't pay for
Right, it does
maintenance
increase
costs.
maintenance costs, but I mean, I don't want folks to think that
No.
the county has done nothing for
No.
IT. I mean,
We're
the fact of the
rolling.
matter is, with the change in technology and how rapidly
sir.
it changes, and it took a long time to get
Yes, sir.
any dollars in SPOST.
I mean, that's a wonderful thing. We're rolling out a new web portal, new dashboarding for the citizens. A lot of this automation you see is coming through some of that.
Right, so I mean, so there's
So-
a significant amount of money that's being spent.
There is. Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah. All right. Following me will be Scott Barfield from Property Management.
First, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your comment and your support earlier.
It depends on how you do.
Okay. With that, though, I'm here today to talk about the different groups we have in property management and what they do and the challenges they face. Property management is made up of 6 groups with a total of 99 employees, and 31 of those are part-time. You have the administrative group, and yes, they're the ones that hold the department together like they do all the other departments. The maintenance group takes care of our daily work orders and all our after-hour emergency calls. The new construction group takes the customer's vision and brings it to life, something the public's going to see in the grand opening of the new Sewell Mill Library. The renovation and design group brings a new look back to our existing facilities. Services group keeps a healthy, clean work environment for the public and the county employees. And our utility administrator makes sure each facility is running as efficiently as possible. The next slide is this is a budget summary of our proposed FY18 and future capital needs.
Go back to the last slide you had.
But this is our
No,
budget
go
summary.
back. I saw a slide in there. Maybe you went ahead. Yeah, you went too far. Oh, it just had an amen response to that.
Okay. All right, well, this is our budget summary of our proposed FY18 and future capital needs. And
Yes, this
the
one.
2 main challenges for our department is how do we continue to meet increasing facility needs without annually allocated capital funding?
Amen.
And how do we maintain adequate service levels with the same number of staff? Is my hair messed up or something? I don't know.
I mean, this slide here is golden. Just golden.
Okay, we can go to the next.
We got one vote for removing it.
Okay. In the next 3 slides, we're going to cover the staffing, square footage, and funding in the maintenance group. The same person is serving almost 2 times more work orders than in 2007. The same person is serving 70% more area than in 2007. Please note that water, fire, and parks departments manage their own facilities, but we do work together at times. We do work on projects together at times, but they do manage their own facilities. We have $428 per building per month to spend on daily maintenance. Our buildings are aging, and our operating budget does not have the capital funding in it to allow for needed capital replacements. Our 10-year plan shows that we need an annual amount of $3.3 million. The 2011 and the 2016 capital funding programs has provided property with an annual amount of $1.2 million per year. After the temporary 2011-2016 capital replacements are complete, the shortfall will be around $20 million. Go back.
2016 splost, you're gonna generate less capital funds than in the 2011 one, which is like 3 years shorter? Approved?
Yes, sir.
The 2011 splost was what? That was a 3-year splost, right?
We received $7.7 million in 2011.
Okay, from the 2011 splost.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the 2016 splost is longer, 2 years longer at a minimum, and you're receiving $2 million less out of that?
Yes, sir.
That department?
That's what it's approved.
Okay, all right.
Commissioner, I did, but, you know,
The next slide talks about that. The 2011 temporary capital program provided property management with $7.7 million. Without capital funding, it will be challenging to maintain a proper maintenance and service in the future. For example, the 2011 temporary capital funding allowed us to replace 33 HVAC units and/or controls totaling $3 million. Let's take a look at our two challenges. Let's look at West Cobb Regional and North Cobb Senior Edition. The West Cobb Regional Library is 15 years old, and we are in the process now, and the carpet should be replaced by the end of the calendar year. In 5 years, the 2016 capital program should be complete. The building will be 20 years old, and we will need to look at possible roof restorations and HVAC upgrades or replacements at that time. The North Cobb Senior Center adds square footage to the maintenance operation. The addition will double the square footage. In the next two slides, we're going to cover staffing and square footage in the services group. And please note, the services group does not rely on capital funding. The same person is serving 52% more area than in 2007. Let's look at the library department. During the recession, the library had to cut 70 pages, part-time positions. One of their assigned duties was cleaning the library. Property did and still does have an annual services cleaning contract with a contractor, where a contractor comes in and cleans after hours. We had to, of course, increase their service, and with that, the library has still lost that personal touch they received from the pages during business hours. The main challenge for the services group is keeping a healthy and clean work environment for the public and our county employees. They need additional help during the day and at night, and a unit line in the budget for landscaping improvement. It's something we are not able to do in the buildings that we manage. The new buildings that will be open in FY18 will need to be cleaned. We've got a lot coming on board in 18.
I must say, from going to some of the libraries, I mean, this is a very real concern, an observable concern. Even as a commissioner, so I make sure I find some place to go before I go to the library, just because if it's only cleaned, as frequently as it is, it's not acceptable.
Yes, ma'am. The pages in the past did take care of that during business hours.
I didn't realize the page system did it, and they were hired through the library.
Through the library, yes, through Helen's budget. All right, let's move to the renovation and new construction groups. Here we have a summary of the project's expenditures for the last 3 years. The work has increased, and the projects are still delivered on time with contractor support. After the contract is signed, the projects are delivered on time. More projects, though, require additional upfront planning. The planning is taking longer, and of course, it's frustrating some of our customers. Great, we have the money to build new buildings, but the additional help could be used in the planning and the overseeing the projects. The renovation group has had a significant increase of large-sized projects, still using the same number of staff. The increases come from supporting the new contract from the new construction group. They are building and installing the cabinets in the new Sewell Mill Library, the new Ackworth Health, Smyrna Health, and the addition to the North Cobb Senior Center. To complete these projects, this cabinet shop To complete these projects, the cabinet shop is going to have to start running a two shifts starting this fall without any overtime to make this happen. So to help cut the cost on the new construction side of a new building, the cabinet shop has gone in and they're building the cabinets for them. Now, of course, by building the cabinets, we're able to do more stuff inside the buildings themselves.
Is that more cost-effective than us outsourcing and getting the cabinets built?
Yes, it cuts the cost in half. Yes, ma'am. The challenge for the renovation group is to continue to provide the county with the necessary resources to accommodate the changing requirements. They need additional help to support work in the field and to manage contracted labor and a unit line item in the budget for special requests from other departments. Again, the renovation and new construction solely, the only thing we pay for them out of our budget is their salary. They rely strictly on other departments' funding and then capital programs. Let's look at the challenges that come from a new building and the higher volume of work. Additional square footage requires maintenance and custodial support and utility costs. The vacated buildings still require capital upgrades, roof, and HVAC replacements. The additional project manager is needed. We got a good staff. I feel like I'm standing up here and just griping and complaining. We have a good staff and they enjoy what they do. I hate to even go to this page right here. This is the master plan for the construction. This for including the judicial buildings on the square. Please note these items have not been funded. The first section is slated to occur pending approval, and the bottom section are items we're going to have to consider moving forward. So as the courts do grow, we're going to have to make changes. These are just typical requests from other departments during the year that we will receive, and some of it has shown up in some of the previous agencies' budget presentations. If you look at the challenges for the administrative group, in 2011 and 2016, the capital projects significantly increased their workload. There's needed software. So the software needed would be used by multiple departments like fire, parks, and water. Working with other departments, our utility administrator through the in-house audits in 2007 has generated savings in the amount of $135,000. And our utility administrator has specialized knowledge of utility management and efficiencies. The utility administrator's knowledge is not being fully used by other departments. We plan to improve the understanding of the utility administrator's role across the departments. All right, first note with this slide here that the total does not include the department's salaries. Our operating budget has and is set up just to keep the facilities running. That's your daily maintenance. Come change a light bulb, my air, we're hot or we're cold. We know that the FY18 budget is not going to support the capital request of $1 million, but we need to slowly start building a unit at the start of FY19, so when the 2016 capital program is complete, we can keep moving forward with the improvements that are needed. The next slide, of course, is the parking deck. There's a committee that is looking at the options or different ways to run the decks, and they should have a recommendation soon to present. And of course, we have the last page here is a summary of our proposed FY18 budget. and future capital needs. The grand total is $84,655,000.
Great job, by the way, interim. And if you back up a couple slides where you're talking about new construction, one more. Right there. You're telling me there's new construction of 84 million that's needed, and if I look at that, the majority of that is with the courts in that area?
Yes, sir. We just now have been told that we're going to have to add a new judge to Superior Court. And that will start up probably in FY19.
I
And
don't
there's
think
additional,
that's
there's
been, that
renovations
hasn't
that
quite
have to
been
be done
decided
for
yet,
that.
but there's,
Sir?
I mean, there's a possibility, yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, but I mean, all of this 84 million is just in the judicial system. It's nothing to do with the rest of the county buildings, is that correct?
27 for the county,
Where?
new Cobb County building.
Oh, I got a cover over it, yeah.
All right, what we did shortly after
I don't know if that's ours or not.
I took over the Support Services Agency is we did an audit of the judicial system and actually went through the buildings, listened to the judges of what their needs will be, plus looked at the problem we were having. We have people that have offices and restrooms at the present moment. We have space issues all through every court system that we have. And so we did an audit of the buildings. These moves would help us meet the need today if we could do these moves right now. And then the ones you see in yellow are things that we need to consider to help the future need of the court system moving forward.
What does new Cobb County building mean?
That would mean that we would take this building here and make it part of the judicial system. And we would need to find somewhere for the staff in this building to go.
That would be us too.
That would be all of us, yes,
Oh.
eventually. So that's an idea. That's an idea. So
That's one way to get rid of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the plan that we looked at for future need. Y'all have all walked through there. I'm not telling you anything that you haven't seen. There's a lot of need within the court system.
Got it.
Yeah, don't leave me.
Appreciate you highlighting all those items. That was a really good job. Sobering, to the least, but you know, it doesn't hide the fact that those are the facts. And if we want
Yes,
to
sir.
continue to have a five-star county, these are some things we need to be looking at. So, okay, I thank you for your hard work. Commissioner Burrow?
Can you go back to the slide with the buildings? Okay, what of these buildings are in SPLOST or any? Are any of them on the SPLOST list from 16?
The renovation you see going on at Magistrate Court is a SPLOST project.
And I thought the additional judge's office was already done.
We do have some SPLOST dollars left from 2005. That would. We do have some funding left from 2005 SPLOST that would go toward that, but it's not enough money to complete the project.
Okay. So only one or two things on this list are part of SPLOST?
Yes, ma'am.
How do we prioritize 2005 SPLOST dollars?
I didn't
How
hear
do we
you.
prioritize 2005 SPLOST dollars? How
That
is
was
it-
money that was left over from the project from building Superior Court.
Okay.
There
so
was
it's
money
from
left
this
over from
project.
that project,
Okay,
yes.
I see. How much money's left over?
600,000,
600.
just a little over.
So that's not.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I would like to turn the presentation over to Al Curtis.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
That money, the 600,000 was the courthouse, and the SPOS project in 2005 said that there was gonna be an extra floor built. And so
It
the
said
reason
it
that
in the
money
line.
is, the money is still kind of tied to the courthouse is because at some point in time, the floor was never completed, it's just there. So the reason the money was not taken away from the courts is it was known at some point in time with the county growing that you're gonna have to go back and
Okay.
spend it.
Okay,
So it wasn't, when we have extra money, normally a project is finished,
and then it goes
the
back to
courthouse was
the,
kind of considered not to be finished.
okay,
That's why it's still there.
thank you for that clarification.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. First slide we have is basically a breakdown of our org chart for fleet management. Fleet management basically is a department that actually supports many departments. It's really where the rubber hits the road. And it actually breaks down as far as literally where the rubber hits the road. And we do a really good job with the lean staff that we have, which is about 34 employees, to manage roughly about 23 to 2,400 unit assets spread throughout the county. Next slide is basically historical budgets going across, and it kind of highlights the overall dollar amount that requested to continue operations and future needs that the department actually needs to continue to provide superior service to the departments of the county. Next slide is basically future needs. It kind of dictates what our future needs looking at moving forward with legislations dealing with emissions machines for the heavy-duty trucks, telematics for vehicles, idle control technologies to reduce our carbon footprint, alignment machines to align the heavy-duty vehicles, solar arrays for new building infrastructure, and backup generators to support all our fueling islands spread throughout the county. Personnel needs, we all know that with the 2016 SPLOST, we added over 280 vehicles for support of public safety's take-home program. With those 280 vehicles, plus the vehicles they ordered, plus the vehicles that we actually received in 2015, we had not had any increase in staff to support these particular vehicles. This particular slide kind of dictates a little bit of that on the four full-time technician positions that we're looking at to moving forward for 2018 to help support with the aging equipment, infrastructure, and the new vehicles that were actually put into service. Fleet operational request, operational capital request. Basically, these are capital items that we need based on the newest for House Bill 170 highway impact fees, which hit us in 16, which actually tax heavy-duty vehicles that are traveling throughout the highways to support that, and also alternative fuel vehicles since they're not paying taxes on the fuel. And again, with the heavy-duty vehicles for completing and maintaining highway roads, that tax was just hit up on us in 16. And we had that in 17 budget, which was not, it was proposed, but was not filled. So we're looking at 18 and moving forward. This would be a yearly $40,000. And depending on how many vehicles we have in that class, that definitely would increase as well.
So what do you do if you don't have the funding?
Ma'am?
What happens if you don't have the funding for this?
If we don't have the funding, I'm pretty sure we'll be getting fined if we have vehicles on the highway that are not paying the impact fees. This is through the legislation. So they actually send us a list based on the vehicles that are registered in the database. And has a dollar amount associated with it. Basically from $50 to $200 is the charge per vehicle depending on the class.
So what's the timeline that you expect for vehicles to come due?
Well, it's every year, and it's normally the last one we did was in April.
And this
So
year,
it typically
April.
comes in
So
April.
this would have to be done by April of next year.
It has to be done within, I think, 30 to 90 days before the payment needs to be there before, I think, fines or.
February?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Commissioner. Fueling infrastructure is the next capital piece. Basically, our fueling infrastructure is 20 to 30 years old, spread throughout the county. And we've been doing all we can to actually keep the infrastructure up and running in place. And of course, with more vehicles, utilizing more transactions, is putting more stress on our already aged fueling infrastructure and components. These fueling islands, again, like I said, they're strategically placed throughout the county, and they get multiple amount of use. Remodel of the car shop, through the SPOS, we actually have a new building that's going to be erected. We're in the process right now of talking to vendors and looking at building designs. With that, we're looking and planning to move some of our technicians that are currently working outside in the elements. We do have technicians that work out in the elements because we don't have the housing and the structure to bring them inside. So with this remodel of the car shop, when our new building is actually done, that will allow them to come out of the weather, be able to work under roof, to be able to make their jobs a lot more efficient. No, it's not.
Why isn't it incorporated in the SPOS?
Why was it not incorporated in the SPOS?
Yeah, why is it not incorporated in the SPOS?
That, I couldn't answer that. I know the building was done in SPOS, but we talked about that initially as far as any upgrades or remodel to the building, but unfortunately did not get entered in the SPOS.
Okay, so this is an existing building that's being remodeled?
That is correct.
Okay, I see.
Vehicle replacements, something hot and heavy on a lot of people's minds. Public safety has been hitting us pretty hard with vehicles that are coming in that need major repairs, DOT vehicles that need major repairs. It's taxed our budget, and again, continued age vehicles based on cost per mile and life cycle cost. Our life cycle costs are exponentially getting more and more higher. Cost per mile on a vehicle, right at 50 cents a mile is when you kind of look to want to move it out of the system. That's the sweet spot where you could actually, the cost per mile gets to a point where you can actually remarket the vehicle, resell it, and still make money off of it. So a lot of our vehicles have passed that particular 50-cent threshold. And this vehicle replacement schedule kind of reflects what we need to actually move out. And our vehicle replacement criteria is 100,000 miles of 5 years under our standard light duty program. Doesn't include any of the heavy duty stuff as well. So looking at this year's particular budget, this particular replacement listing, we funded about 48 units. We received through fund balance about $2 million to replace vehicles, which that's vehicles spread out to all the departments, not just public safety. So we only had that. So we had to streamline and prioritize and work with the departments to try to get as much out of the money to reflect the needs that they had as well. The next line is going to be the 74 units that didn't get funded within that 17 budget year, which equates to about $3.6 million. So we still have those 74 units that did meet the criteria that we could not replace due to funding. The next line is going to be our FY18. In FY18, we anticipate and project about 128 vehicles that are going to meet that criteria as far as being replacement. Still doesn't include the 74 that we didn't do in 17. That 128 vehicles equates to about 5.2 million. And then also we ran it out again all the way to 19. If we do get these vehicles replaced in that particular cycle, we'll need 100 replaced in 19, which equates to about 3.3 million. Our vehicle needs are high. Public safety on a current basis, since they're going to a take-home program, we have officers that come in the morning right at shift change when they're getting off shift to come in and get their PM preventive maintenance done. We're doing a really good job. I applaud the shop for getting the vehicles turned around quick. But the one thing we have to realize is as these vehicles do get older, they're not going to need the standard oil change. They're going to need brakes. They're going to need shocks. They're going to need rotors. They're going to need fuel system changes. And that's going to put that officer at a disadvantage with having to, one, either drop the vehicle off or have somebody come pick him up. And that is going to be reflected later on as we get to the overall vehicle replacement budget. Some of those numbers have been taken from DOT and some from police as well. This right here is basically the projection based on our criteria. Doesn't include a lot of the vehicles that PD said they may need, DOT said they need, and then additions as well. Next slide. Speaking on the vehicles and fueling infrastructure, we kind of talked about that briefly. Our fueling infrastructure is 20 to 30 years old. Our fueling transaction trends, of course, are getting higher. As you can look at 15, 16, and we're projected 17, the transactions are definitely getting higher because we have more vehicles on the road, more vehicles to fuel, and our cost dollar, again, for fueling is definitely going to go up. Currently, right now, since the cost of fuel is about $2.15, is what we typically pay. Based on 2015, which the fuel cost was about $2.84. As you can see, the cost is just a little bit higher than what it was in 2015, but the transactions themselves are a lot greater.
Al, I'm asking, do we have any way to go and get gas at a regular station with a card of some type, a fleet card or anything like that? Or we do all our fueling for all our vehicles at our own 35 stations?
We actually have our police motorcycle pool. We have them set up on a fueling card program because their vehicles require 91 octane. So they do have fueling cards that we have set up for them. There's a lot of different fueling cards programs that are out there. Some of them are state contracts, some of them are not. They're really good programs. They do give us the flexibility to fuel off-site. The sheriff, we actually introduced him to a fueling card because they do go out of state to pick up prisoners and so on. So they had to have that flexibility as well. So to answer your question, yes.
Well, my question is, I mean, I think currently, I think gas is $2.19 a gallon. We're only getting maybe 4 cents less. Why would we want the infrastructure to support that when we can give them a fueling card and you can go anywhere and pick it up, gas?
Well, the volatility of the fuel itself. We are actually a part of a fuel co-op. So we're guaranteed a specific price on the fuel for years.
But if you purchased X number of gallons or thousands of gallons, you'd get a price discount too on the fueling card.
Not through a fuel card program. The fuel card program basically gives you the flexibility, and whatever the pump price is at the pump, that's what you pay.
But
And
we
some
don't pay
of them-
taxes on that.
No, we do not.
So that takes 19 cents off or something right there, doesn't it? I mean, state taxes, we don't pay taxes on the fuel.
No, we don't pay taxes on fuel.
All I'm saying is if you've got several $100,000 to replace the aging infrastructure of our fueling stations, maybe I'd like you to take a look at maybe a way to do that with a fuel card instead of infrastructure. And maybe we could save some money that way.
Yeah, but I think what you were saying is basically the cooperative is hedging on fuel. That's how you, yes. So, I mean, fuel may be low now,
Correct.
but it could, I mean, something has to do is happen in the Middle East and all of a sudden the fuel cards, you're gonna be paying twice that. Whereas with the fuel hedging and the bulk fuel sales, the price is not gonna change as quickly or as much. Because those are long-term contracts, right?
That is correct. And that's one of the, we've had our fueling infrastructure for a long period of time, so we know how to do that job well. We know how to
But
do
you're
the
gonna
job
need
well.
$700,000 to replace it.
Well, that's to all-inclusive replace the dispensers. Those dispensers are 30 years old, yes.
No, I
We're gonna
understand
need
that.
700, but if you think
That
about
takes a
over
lot of fuel
overall,
savings to offset $700,000 when the BP station has a new modern fuel dispenser. I just think there ought to be a way to look at it. I don't know.
well, think about it in this respect too, Commissioner. If we have a weather event, if we have where the fuel islands, where there's a shortage in fuel like we had, 4 years ago, they're gonna price the fuel where they're gonna make money. If we have infrastructure here, we're guaranteed a price. We'll get slaughtered if we have our police line up at a fuel station because they do not give priority. Dollar speaks it all, and that's what they're in the business to make money, no matter what the situation is. So with having our fuel infrastructure in place, and we haven't done anything to it in 30 years. So we need to make an investment. I'm not saying a total investment in gutting the whole thing. We can incrementally do this, but we need to do something.
I'm on your side. I'm just trying to see if there's different ways. I know some of the municipalities and others use fuel cards and they don't have fuel infrastructure?
Most major municipalities, all the three major groups, Gwinnett, Fulton, Atlanta, DeKalb, all have fueling infrastructure. But they also use a variety of fueling cards too. Fueling cards is a good secondary option. If we have any particular issues where we need to go out of town, or we do utilize those. So I'm with you on that too, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, next slide. We talked about new vehicles. Everybody thinks you buy new vehicles, the cost per mile is gonna go down, the prices for the parts you're not gonna have to worry about. But with our police department and our departments, we do see things in vehicles before any of the retail market does, of course, because we typically put a lot of miles on the vehicles, and we're in chases, we're doing our normal business. And with the new with the new Interceptor, totally different than the Crown Vic. It's been discontinued since 2011, and it does require more labor time to do the work. Looking at the chart, if you can see, Crown Vic to replace a water pump, Commissioner Weatherford, I know if you had a 350 Chevy and you're doing the water pump on it or the fuel pump on it, you can do that no problem. Half an hour, an hour. Try going from a Crown Vic from 1.6 hours on a water pump to one of the Interceptors to 14 hours. The engine has to get pulled in order to do the water pump. And then if you ask yourself, well, why do we go to such vehicle?
Yes.
Though these are police application vehicles. That was a vehicle that took the place of the Crown Vic. The Crown, we did actually bring some Caprices within the fleet as well. Their cost per mile was higher as well.
Did you say this has been which has been
The
discontinued?
Crown Vic.
Oh, okay.
Crown Victoria, yes,
Okay, you're
which
saying
was
it
a stellar vehicle. I mean, it was, you could beat it up, set it on fire, do whatever, and it'll still run. But unfortunately, it's not around anymore. But basically, I just want to reflect that the labor costs that it takes our technicians to do the work on some of the newer vehicles is definitely gone up tremendously. Because as you can think about new vehicles, you have autonomous features on it. You have backup cameras, you have lane departures, you have automatic park assist, you have automatic brake assist. All these different components are electrically driven. It's no manual parts that you can just put on and say, it's working. You can put on a part, but you still have to reprogram the ECM of the computer to say, yes, I have a new part on, this is the serial number on it, I want you to work. And that's what you have to do. So it does increase the amount of time it takes to do work on these vehicles, and the way that the vehicles are configured takes longer to do. If you look over here on the right-hand side, you can see how the number of work orders, of course, is going to grow because we have more vehicles. Our overall vehicle to personnel ratio is right now 123 pieces of equipment to one technician. Standard industry averages are roughly about 80 to 1. So we're doing a lot more with less technicians, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking to add 4 more technicians to help minimize the use of just one technician to 123 pieces of equipment. Next slide. Basically, fleet growth, we kind of talked about that last 3 years. We added 90 units in 15, 280 units this year, in 16, and 48, and we still have a few more that we're adding as well. Basically shows the growth. Our fleet average age is 8 years old. Typically, within your fleet that I've seen throughout the other counties and some of the other fleet managers that I've talked to on a daily and weekly, if you have a fleet 5 years old or better, then that means you're cycling the vehicles out and you have an adequate vehicle replacement program in place with capital dollars to do it on a yearly basis. And currently, I know everybody knows that we don't do it on a yearly basis. We use fund balance to pay for our replacement vehicles, which I think that we're trying to move into an arena where we're putting away capital dollars to be able to do it on a yearly basis to make sure our average age of our fleets goes to at least five years. And again, the overall life cycle cost increases when you have vehicles going over 150,000 miles on the road. Fleet challenges, cost for the number of the number of vehicles again continues to grow. The cost for the parts for these vehicles again is growing as well, along with the time it takes to repair them. A steering rack on a Crown Vic used to be $800. For the new Interceptor, it's $2,400. So if a police officer's chasing after a perk and hit a concrete, go over a curb or something like that and damages the steering rack in pursuit or just following, that's $2,400 plus the time to actually do the work. So again, it increases the amount of time it takes for my technicians to do the work. If we tie one of them up on a steering rack or a water pump, that's one technician out of the queue when we have vehicles coming in for PMs to be able to get the officers turned around and get back on the job. Staffing, training on the new technology, we talked about that. We need that. We need dollars for the training, this new software to be able to reprogram, flash, and program modules within the car. Operations, the timeline to change parts has increased. We basically talked about that as well. And the item for facilities and infrastructure, with this new fleet facility, Fleet has been really proactive in insourcing. We talk about operating as a business. We've been looking into that, and we've been doing it since 2014. We've been insourcing smaller municipalities from fuel to repair and maintenance to motorcycles. And I think it's a growing trend to look into smaller municipalities through shared services, where small municipalities don't have the actual infrastructure, they don't have the employees to be able to work on certain pieces of equipment. Us taking and gathering that and bringing it in-house to generate more revenue. But again, in that same respect, we have to have the infrastructure, and again, we have to have the people. And I'm very proactive, and when it comes down to that, I'm very aggressive in that particular standpoint. We've been working and been talking to Wellstar 2 years ago about bringing at least 300 of their vehicles in. We had some traction in it, and it kind of fizzles out due to some other things that went on. So with that said, again, we're looking to do a little bit more insourcing, but again, not neglecting and taking care of our on-base customers that we have here for the county. And we talked about aging fuel infrastructure being 20 years old. Next slide. And then we're going to hit the overall ending of the recap on it. Operational, capital, personnel needs, fleet needs $23,099,664. That's what we're requesting, to go ahead and put some of these things into place to fund vehicle replacement, to add additional employees, to be able to accommodate the vehicles that we actually have to service, and to service our public safety, DOT, property management, tax assessors, all the departments throughout the county. Any questions? I'd like to bring up Steve White from the tax assessor's office.
Okay, and we're going to call this, come back from our recess here and hear from Steve White.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Just want to go over some very brief information in regards to our office. We have 53 full-time employees, 20 contract employees, and we have 4 divisions. A lot of times when people think of the tax assessor's office, they think of residential properties and commercial properties. We also have a personal property division, and then we have a mapping division, which by state law, we are required to maintain live and active tax maps for each and every parcel. So those are the 4 divisions. Our commercial property is entirely contracted out. We have some contracts for field assistance in residential, and then we have an auditor that we have a contract with that works with our personal property department. Our budget is pretty basic. Most of our budget has to do with professional services for our contract money. Those 3 contracts that I just referenced are not changing from this year to next year. So really the only 3 basic requests that we have in regards to increases has to do with accountable equipment. We have some needs to keep our field personnel active in regards to the devices that they use, both laser measuring, field tablets, et cetera. So we have some accountable equipment needs. Our database is not currently set up to accept appeals electronically. That's something that the Board of Tax Assessors is reviewing. Other counties do that currently, and we are reviewing that currently to see if that's something that we are going to move that way. And then lastly, Community is a web enhancement product that we are looking to purchase that would keep our data in line with keeping our assessment office as part of a five-star county, to borrow the chairman's line. It is a way for taxpayers to look and see what is being sold in their area, their valuation area, so that they can better understand how their property is assessed and why they are assessed at the current number that they are. We hear from a lot of folks that they don't know what properties are selling for in their neighborhood. This is a very user-friendly way, even though you can see sales online on our database or on our website, very user-friendly way of seeing what's sold via a map. Just some things to highlight as well in regards to some expenses. As I mentioned, our current contracts that we are under do not change next year, but we noticed that they are running about 12% higher than the previous set of contracts that we had. So we can anticipate an increase in a few years when those run out. And then also, I think that we will see some legislation this year that will affect property tax. Some things that you have seen going on in other counties will cause the General Assembly quite possibly to make some changes. When those occur, there are programming changes, as Sharon Stanley mentioned in her presentation. And so IS does a great job in handling those matters and working with our vendor to make sure that we're adhering to all the necessary obligations that the state lays out for us. So the total amount of increase that we're asking for the tax assessor's office is $80,500. This kind of just gives you a little bit of different perspective in regards to what work we have. Commercial, you'll see that the parcel count changes each year. How does that happen, people wonder? Well, that happens when people purchase property and then they split it out and put development on it. We especially notice that in residential. Somebody buys a big tract of land, that goes from 1 parcel to 40 parcels. That's how we get new parcels. Every time we have new parcels, there's more to maintain for our office. So you see in commercial, we had an increase in the number of structures, up to 142 last year. That's up considerably over where it was. Now, a lot of that is due to the growth in Cumberland. A lot of those new buildings in Cumberland are part of that 142 number. Residential, you see the same thing. About 1,500 homes coming online each year, and that we see the growth. There's a lot of value tied to what's coming on, both residentially and commercially. So every time we get new homes, we have to maintain and make sure that those values are appropriate every year. So we're up to about 235,000 residential parcels and a little over 12,000 commercial parcels. That's all I have for presentation. If you have any questions.
That figure, 235 residential, 235,000, that's not on here.
That's correct. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
okay.
235,000 residential parcels and over 12,000 commercial
Oh,
parcels.
but thank you, appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Joe Tommy from purchasing.
He's gonna be longer than that.
No, this will be a short one too. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager, just wanted to give a brief overview of purchasing department and what some of our future needs and challenges are. Purchasing is a small, very small department, but we perform a number of important procurement-related functions. And let's go to the next slide, see this. And our department is comprised of 10 full-time staff members, and we divide the department into 4 small support units. And those units are administration, and then we have contract management. We assumed responsibility for contract management back in 2015, about 2 years ago. And one of the main goals of contract management is to develop and implement a centralized contract management repository. And we have finalized implementation, and we're now beginning to import county contracts into that system. We also have general purchasing. General purchasing mainly handles orders and informal competitive solicitations under $50,000. They also process all of our purchasing orders and documents, and also handle disposition of surplus property. Under sealed bids, that division handles everything in excess of $50,000, and that includes the solicitation of formal competitive sealed bids and proposals. One important function they also perform is that we actually solicit bids and manage about 117 annual maintenance contracts or master agreement contracts. And those are for a variety of goods and services that's used countywide. This is a type of volume purchasing contract to save money for the county. Okay, our budget, again, we got a small budget. We've remained fairly flat on the operating side for the last 2 years, and we're only asking for a small increase of $4,090. Okay, CP. And really, we have two main areas that we're focusing on, and that's to increase our travel training registration fees for professional development. This is mainly to address professional development needs for contract management. We never increased our budget to cover that position, so that would cover training for our contracts management coordinator. And then under computer services, Sharon mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of our main goals for FY18 is to move towards electronic receipt of bids and proposals. And we've already looked at 4 or 5 different systems, and and that would be a small cost. We're estimating about $1,250. There's some really good low-cost solutions out there. Okay, one thing we do, we track the activity of a lot of our purchasing documents. And I won't spend much time on these, but just to give you a quick overview, the requisitions are the orders that we process for orders in excess of $2,000. And in 16, we issued over 2,300. And then when we go to, we have something called a PD, or that's an internal purchasing document. And we issued over 16,600 orders in FY16. Now, those are those decentralized paper orders that departments use to go out and buy low-cost goods and mainly goods and sometimes services. We have a solution that we hope is going to eliminate those PDs. It's very expensive. Again, it's a paper-based system. Master agreements, again, I mentioned that we administer about 117 of those per year. And then I'll tell you about the dollars that we spend on that in just a minute. We also track the number of formal solicitations that we issue. Those are both invitation to bids and also RFPs and RFQs. And in FY16, we did, if you total those two numbers, we did about 187 of those formal solicitations. And those are formally advertised and publicly open solicitations. Okay, CP. Okay, as far as the dollar volume that's associated with issuing these documents, for informal solicitations, we awarded over $61 million in contract value for FY16. For FY16, for formal solicitations, we awarded contract values of a little bit over $154 million. So if you total those two numbers, we issued around $215 million in contract awards during that time. And again, we're a small department, but I did want to mention I am extremely proud of what our department is able to accomplish. They literally process thousands of different documents in a fiscal year. So they do a great job. We have a great team that really accomplishes a lot for the county. And then we track our cost savings. And this is something we started doing in 2013. And it's a simple process. We take our low bids versus our high bids, and we track the difference in those costs on what we achieve through competition. And in FY16, we recorded about $13 million in savings as a result of utilizing competitive procurement methods. And then funds received, that includes funds that we received through the sale of equipment. And most of that is through e-commerce. That's either eBay or govdeals.com. And also we have usually an informal yard sale on a Saturday each year to dispose of surplus property. FY15, we sold a lot of surplus police vehicles, and that's why that number is so high. It was a little bit over 319,000. In 16, that number dropped down to about 185, and again, that's because we didn't have near the number of vehicles that we had to dispose of.
When's your next yard sale, Tommy?
Ma'am?
When's your next yard sale?
Well, we don't know yet. We don't, right now, we don't have a centralized location for surplus.
Let
so
us know
we're-
so we can publicize
Yes,
it.
ma'am. Okay, a little bit more about our contract management initiative. Again, we started that process back in 2015, and it's really had an impact on our department in three main ways. First of all, it's increased our staff participation in conversion of documents to electronic format. We're in the process currently of converting all our purchase orders, our delivery orders and all that into an electronic format. Instead of having paper-based system, we're going to an electronic system. And one of the important contract initiatives that we're doing under contract management is trying to bring in more local and DBE business. So we've started a program of trying to do more outreach through contract management, and that's required more attendance at events where we can go out and meet local and DBE vendors and try to increase our local participation. And then increased training. This has been a countywide increase in training, not only for purchasing, but also for a number of our countywide staff members. Okay. Okay, and future challenges and needs. One thing that we'd like to accomplish moving forward would be the implementation of a purchasing card program. And I had mentioned a couple minutes ago about the number of internal purchasing documents that's issued by departments, and that was over 16,000. P-card system will eliminate all those paper documents. And then that would also create master billing, and so instead of hundreds of little invoices, we'd have one master invoice, okay? So that's one of our future needs and challenges to implement that program. And then in order to increase accountability for surplus property, we'd like to implement a inventory or surplus property management system, and we estimate the cost of that would run about $10,300. And then in order to support the contract management system and to support our contracts management coordinator, and this contract management is going to be a big undertaking moving forward, and we would ask for two future positions. That would be a surplus property manager and then a contracts management administrator to help support contract management. Okay?
So how would you monitor that P-card system? Because obviously waste, fraud, and abuse is the concern, and there's a record of governments grossly abusing this card. And all it takes is one bad grossly abuse to ruin the whole system.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, most P-card transactions are legitimate, honest transactions, but it's those one or two bad ones that make the newspaper,
Right.
and they give the whole program a bad name. So we got several ways that we would monitor that, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier when we presented information on P-card program, but the key to a successful P-card program is oversight. You have to have oversight, and if you take a look and study the ones where they had abuse, it's normally always a lack of oversight. So, for example, one basic type of oversight we would do when an employee went out and utilized a P-card and they made a purchase using P-card, they are required to bring back an itemized receipt, and that would be presented to their manager, and then the manager has to sign off on that receipt. So somebody over them has to come in and review what they purchased. But then we have other things we do. We can block certain purchases on the card. We can set dollar limits on the card. But again, oversight's the key. And then we get into other things like it requires training of staff, and then every staff member is required to sign an oath form stating they understand the process and that all the transactions will be conducted according to policy.
And you've been talking to Tony about how to do this?
Would
Tony at the audit? Latona?
Oh, Latona, yeah, so we've had a couple conversations with
Okay, all right. I
Latona.
just want to make sure
And,
because,
Bill and I.
and in all fairness, a lot of times the headlines are elected officials that have used the card. I'm gonna be, I'm not, obviously this would not happen on this board. But I get I didn't want to unfairly, ruin, besmirch the reputation of the staff. Because I think they understand more than most that the challenges and also the danger of misusing the card.
Yes.
But
We feel like if it's administered properly, it would be a big cost savings for the county and really increase efficiency also.
so would you have like a rough number of what that efficiency would be? Or you'd be still looking at those numbers?
Well, we're still looking at, we're in the early stages of.
Okay, all right.
But you
looking
got
into the program.
16,000 POs you won't be issuing, therefore you
Well-
should have a lot of staff being freed up.
It would be, yes, sir, it'd be 16,000 paper documents that would be eliminated. Yeah.
And
And then
Mr.
that carries over to accounts payable because now accounts payable is paying hundreds of invoices
Now they're paying one.
that's produced by those 16,000 documents, whereas they would pay one master bill each month. And then those charges would be allocated to the different accounts.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Weatherford did want to mention also that the two positions that are being contemplated, or at least are being discussed right now as part of the program, the fees that would be generated, that we would be paid, utilizing the government contract through Bank of America would fund those positions, so that would be
That's the
revenue.
rebates we'd be getting for spending money.
That's correct, sir.
Do we get any rebates now?
Not to this amount.
We
I'm
get
just-
rebates through
He's
the
being
e-payables
rhetorical.
program.
Commissioner Burrow?
That's mine.
The purchase orders under 2,000, is that what the 16,000?
Yes, ma'am,
Is-
yeah. Now,
Okay, and-
purchasing, we track those orders and we review those orders monthly to make sure we don't have splits or we have people trying to circumvent the policy. But those are, yes, ma'am, those are all the low dollar, mainly goods purchases that are done by each department. So it's a decentralized process.
And do you have an idea of how many employees would have access to a P card, or a P card in their name or in the department name? And different ones could use it, or how does that work?
It would be in a department name, and at this point, we're not sure. We wouldn't have many cards per department, but it's going to depend on the needs of that department, how frequently they have to use the card. It could be that some smaller departments may only have one card. And then when an employee needed that card, they would go sign it. Somebody would, probably their administrative coordinator would manage that card, and then they'd have to sign the card out. And then again, once they use it, they bring back an itemized receipt, and then they return the card to them.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sorry, I just want to add one more thing to the P card. What we're working on, we've already met with the Board of Education. Did a visit to Hall County, and we are drafting a policy and procedures that we would like to bring back before the board, so you can have a good look at what those would entail. But before we do that, we're going to provide those to Internal Audit Latona for her review and get her input on those as well.
Okay.
So that's before a P card goes out day one.
Oh, yeah, well, I hope so. Commissioner Ott?
Yeah, I just have one more question. I know you talked about that the employee using the P card would have to come back to the supervisor, but obviously if someone's misusing it, that whole step may not happen. Are these, right now you said you're reviewing all 16,000 of these purchase orders and all that. Is there a statement that comes out every month from the P card that you would see?
Well, we get we don't get an itemized receipt, or we don't get detail on what was purchased under that, but we get a listing of PDs that were done per department. And it gives us the PD number, the vendor, and how much the charge was. So what we do, then we look and make sure that we don't have departments that are going out and using PDs, or splitting PDs to try to circumvent our
And
competitive
you'd be able to
bidding
do the
policy.
same thing with the P card?
Sir?
You'd be able to do the same thing with the P card?
Yes, sir. In fact, one advantage of a P card system, we don't have this advantage with PDs. We can, Bill and I, or whoever has authority to do that, we can go in and monitor a credit card number. So let's say Bill had a card and he was going out making transactions. If I want to see what kind of activity he's doing, I can go in and pull that card number up, and I can see where he went, what time he went there, and who he bought it from. So,
Okay.
okay, yeah, so it's
He needs,
actually
he
easier.
needs special monitoring, I might add.
I'm not gonna have cards.
No, I'm not having one of those. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. From Bank of America, right, yeah. But again, that system is much easier to monitor, and we can track that activity much easier in real time than we can with the PD system. Yeah.
Okay, Eddie, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you've heard our presentation from Support Services. We hope we gave you some idea of the future and our future needs.
Problem, we're just gonna do away with the judicial system, we can pay the bills.
That's right. That's right.
Problem, yeah.
I will tell you, we continue to work on a work plan of how we make all this happen. We're not turned around and say, here, y'all come up with some ideas. We're gonna come up with some ideas too. So we continue to work on that, and see if there's ways that we could make this happen. So, we're available at any time to come talk to you one-on-one if you would like for us to, and expand on some of the information that you've heard today. But we appreciate you taking the time to listen, and listen to what our needs are out there. And I do want to say this is no reflection on the employees that work for Support Services. They bust their butt every day. They work hard. They do their job, and they've got us through to this point. And so I'm proud of each and every one of them. So thank you for taking the time to listen.
Well, thank the staff for preparing this. This was really, really well done. I'm
Thank
very
you.
pleased by all that I saw today, and I'm sure the other board members join me in that.
Thank you.
So with that, we're adjourned.